Hello everyone. I'm sitting at my dining room table just thinking about everything that I've read in the news, I've seen, I've heard, the podcasts I listened to, the blogs that I've read, and I just decided that I wanted to write a blog too. And I want to read that blog to you. But before I do that, I want to say thank you to everybody that is speaking out. And for those of you that haven't, start talking to people in your community. That's a start. We've got to do something. We have to unite. So please allow me to read my blog to you. I feel sick in heart and soul. Yet another person of color, another black man, has been killed while I sit here and write a book about justice reform. How can we even talk about justice reform if people are dying before they even get their day in court? Where is the justice, much less the reform? As an educator who is white, it is not lost upon me that we are a large part of what needs to be changed. How can we talk about diversity, equality, and inclusion from a white perspective? We must admit that there is white privilege, and we have to work to break that down so that there is equality. I saw firsthand the racial disparity in prison. I saw firsthand how the majority of my students were Latino and Black. They were men of color. They were disadvantaged to say the least, many of whom could not afford an attorney or even the basic needs of food and shelter. There was a large number who came from an environment that either was not supportive of pursuing an education or outside forces led them to make other choices. Whether it was systemic oppressions that led them there or their own actions, prison has become a new path of education for many. They can educate themselves and they can better themselves. They finally have a voice if only someone will listen. George Floyd's ability to communicate was truncated. His basic right to express himself fell on deaf ears to those in control. His ear was cut off and he died before he could speak, before he could even defend himself, let alone get a day in court. People of color have been undervalued for centuries. Their voices have not been heard. And the leaders, those in power, who have cried out for change, have been assassinated through our troubled history. From Abraham Lincoln to Malcolm X, from John F. Kennedy to Martin Luther King, we have learned some lessons. But there is so much more to learn and many more lessons yet to be told. We are approaching the anniversary of yet another slain rights leader, Medgar Evers, who was gunned down on June 12, 1963. I don't have answers, but I think about these men and wonder what their message would be to us today. I have come face to face with the fact that I was naive, thinking I had learned a lot about racism through my time working with the men in prison. My time there didn't even scratch the surface of what we are experiencing now. The death of George Floyd happened right in front of our faces, and it was brought right into our living rooms and on our social platforms over and over. This is today's news, but so often something bigger will happen tomorrow, and this fight is once again forgotten. We should all take caution to not allow senseless loss of lives, such as those of George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery, to become commonplace. As I reflect on how little we have come forward in the area of race relations, I think of the many injustices in our history, such as those perpetrated against Harry and Harriet Moore. Their story is one we should all know, yet we do not. This is another case where it is believed that local law enforcement improprieties once again coincide with a lack of justice. Harry T. Moore was murdered well before his time, under the cover of darkness by cowards who wanted to silence him. Harry T. Moore was a teacher and a civil rights activist. In 1934, Mr. Moore started the Brevard County NAACP in Florida and later organized an additional 61 chapters in that state. He insisted on equal rights and refused to be intimidated. He fought for equal pay for Black teachers and helped more than 100,000 Black citizens register to vote. He and his wife Harriet were fired from their teaching positions because of their activism. Christmas night 1951, which was also their 25th wedding anniversary, Harry and Harriet were fatally injured in their homes in Mims, Florida. A bomb was placed beneath their floor joists underneath their bed. Harry died on the way to the hospital, and his beloved wife, Harriet, died 9 days later. Mr. Moore knew he was a marked man, yet he still continued to fight for what he believed. To learn more about Mr. and Mrs. Moore, I recommend you read the book about their lives, The Bomb Heard Around the World. Walter T. Shaw is producing a film and has spent 4 years lobbying to bring this story to life in the hopes that their legacy is not forgotten. We need this story told. Now more than ever. Sadly, and in echo of our times, their memorial sign was riddled with bullets in January of 2020. People of color are still in danger, and white people must speak up to end racism, to end stereotypes, to end hate. I sense the wind of change and hope and pray that this story, this time in history, does not get set aside for tomorrow's news story. Be brave enough to make a change.